ASMR video. It's on it's about one of my favourite artists, and made up a lot of the music that I listened to growing up when I was, pretty depressed, and it really helped me a lot. So I just wanted to make a video on the Downward Spiral album. Not so much, well, it's looking at this book that I got. I was such a huge Nine Inch Nails fan that I would buy anything to do with them, and there wasn't much available except this tiny book. I know now you can probably go on the internet and buy heaps of stuff, but this, like, I saw this book, it was $20. I had to get it. I also remember the first time I saw a Nine Inch Nails, whatever, like a booklet about them. It was like, I think it was the actual guitar tablature book for the Downward Spiral. It could have been, because it had Trent on the front and he was covered in mud. Must have been the Woodstock around that time, and I always remember that book. And there's not many guitar parts in, well, there are, but they're not like, they're more like parts of the song. They're not like, you don't go from start to finish of a song, a Nine Inch Nails song, just with guitar. It like comes in at different points. But I thought this would be a pretty good book to have a look at, since it's been 25 years since the album came out. So we've got chapter of contents. What do I... May as well go to making of the Downward Spiral. That is page 40. So I'll just read some of this if it's in focus. On July 4th, 1992, Trent moved out to Los Angeles. The plan sounded simple. Instead of setting up a formal recording studio, he wanted a house where he could build his own custom studio. That way, he could work on his own time and at his own pace. In an interview with Keyboard Magazine, Trent put it this way: "I wanted to fine-tune my engineering skills. That's the one thing we've always lacked in the Nine Inch Nails inner circle. I figured if I had a studio around, I'd inevitably figure out how to do it. And also, for the first time, we had the resources to do something right, so we ended up buying a big console and a couple of, stutter? What is it? First time, a couple of stutter machines because it was cheaper than renting in the long run. Now, all we needed was somewhere to build the studio. He'd been looking at a place in New Orleans, but he wasn't totally satisfied with that property. So on nothing more than a whim, he called a couple of real estate agents and flew out to LA. There were lots of cool houses out on the coast. All he needed to do was to find it. It didn't take long. I was curious about LA. He remembers. It seemed like a farming ground for silicone breasts. It's the most foreign place in America in terms of the way people think, look, atmosphere, you name it. After being shown about 15 houses in one day, Trent settled on a house in Bel Air at 10050 Cielo Drive. I don't know how you say that number properly, but it was perfect. Cielo Drive is a narrow, hard-to-find uphill cul-de-sac high above the smog in the Hollywood Hills off Benedict Canyon Road. The main house was more than 100 feet behind a gate and hidden from the road by a large number of trees. The nearest neighbour was more than 100 yards away. To make things even more inviting, the rooms were huge. The main house was over 3,200 square feet, and there was a large freeform swimming pool off the master bedroom. If any guests dropped by, they could be put up in the 2,000 square foot cottage towards the back of the property. It was quiet and secluded, yet accessible to the rest of the city. Exactly the kind of place where a musician could work in comfort. Blah blah blah. Although the house had been up for sale for a couple of months, owner Al Weintraub had been able to move the property. Trent probably assumed that it had to do with the $4.9 million price tag, but if it was so expensive to buy, why was it so relatively cheap to rent? Someone should have told him about the history of Cielo Drive. It was world famous as a human slaughterhouse. Just after midnight on Saturday 1969, 5 of the most horrific murders in American history took place in and around the beautiful ranch house. 3 women and 1 man, all members of the Charles Manson's family, cut the phone wires, scaled the embankment off the road and crept across the yard. The first person they encountered was Stephen Parent, who was... Sorry, this isn't really getting towards... So it was the Tate house, basically. So Trent did go through a lot of depression around this time. He had, I guess, faced writer's block in his career. He wanted to do something different from Pretty Hate Machine and Broken. And they were learning new equipment, and hang on, so this is my favourite bit. And speaking of strange spirits, an eerie coincidence began to emerge as the final product came together. The word pig kept coming up again and again. It appeared in lyrics and song titles all over the album. Could it be some strange manifestation of the macabre message left by the Mansonite Susan Atkins on the front door? Or was it all just an accident? Trent claims that the history of the place had no effect on the album. He maintains that the vast majority of the lyrics were written before he ever even leased the house. I mean, the songs on the Downward Spiral just flow into one another, and they create such a disturbing landscape. And they got a lot of samples from films and stuff and built songs around that. One notable exception was a rhythm track of Closer. The fat bass and snare sound was lifted directly from the introduction of Iggy Pop's Nightclubbing from his 1977 album The Idiot. After mangling it a bit with a computer and outboard gear, the samples were loaded into a Roland R70 in order to give it a mechanical drum feel. A variety of synthesizers were used on the record. Along with his usual arsenal of Mini-Moogs, Prophets, Oberheims, Trent managed to acquire something called a Obermoog, one of just 3 prototype devices in the world. Yeah, they're very obsessed with their gear. So, yeah, I always, I love the early career of Nine Inch Nails. I've seen them twice. Yeah. One of my favorite bands, and yeah, the video for Closer is probably one of the greatest video clips ever made. And I like his work with Marilyn Manson as well, and just his basic outlook. This is Trent I'm talking about. His basic outlook on music, the music industry, having control over what you create. He's very single-minded about, having everything to his liking. He basically writes all the music and plays most of the instruments on albums. I just appreciate that kind of work ethic where you don't let limitations. He didn't have a band to begin with. He didn't have members, so that's why he made his album by himself, basically, because he was in a band with drummers and that, but he found he was better working alone, I guess. And I appreciate that. Like, if you can't find a drummer or a bass player, do it yourself. It doesn't matter. And that's a lot. I like electronic musicians a lot because they can basically just do everything by themselves and not have to worry about other people interjecting about if that song goes there or whatever. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this video, and Downward Spiral is one of my favourite albums ever made. So thank you for watching. Bye.